Just trying to scoot in there alone. It pinballs to the crease.
Let's get it.
Oh my God! Here we go.
You're listening to the Pod Street Blues Podcast with your hosts, Derek.
How you gonna get it, Bobby?
John. Matt Casey.
Unnecessary, but totally necessary.
And Hoagie.
What's not to love?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of Pod Street Prospects. I'm John, and I'm here with my buddy, the man, the myth, the sandwich, Hoagie. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, John. How we doing, sir?
Doing all right. Realizing that August World Juniors is not quite the same thing as December World Juniors.
Right? It's tough.
I mean, I feel like the biggest takeaway so far from the World Juniors is no one is at these games.
Yeah, right. There's nobody. It looks like COVID again.
It's crazy.
It's scary.
I mean, I had on, I can't remember what game it was. It was the first night. I think it was the middle game of the first night. And my wife was sitting there with me, and she's like, "Do they still have COVID regulations?" I was like,
nope.
"No."
I mean,
Nope.
unless you're watching a Canadian game, that's the only time when there's people in the stands.
Right. I
Because
mean,
you're in Alberta.
right. And I don't even know if it
people
was still at like max capacity.
No, it definitely wasn't. It was like
Right.
the lower bowl that was kind of filled up. That was about it.
Well, the first day I saw a tweet, and I have no idea who put it out, but like it was like the first 3 games in total, it was just over 1,000 people.
Yikes.
That's brutal, dude.
That's not good revenue.
No. I mean, listen, it's August, right? People are on vacation and all that stuff. It's a whole different bag of beans. I guess there's better things to do than be inside a hockey rink. But for Canada, you know, they live and breathe the World Juniors. It's crazy to me. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the World Juniors before we kind of get into what we're going to do today. And what we're going to do today is we've picked 5 other prospects that we're going to just kind of chit chat about to set up the year. But World Juniors, we've seen a little bit of Team Canada. They're actually playing right now. They're thumping on whoever they're playing.
Slovakia, I think. Yeah,
It was like,
last time I checked, it was 6-0.
it was 8-1 when I looked, and it was the second period. So we've got Forrester and Denoyer.
Yep.
Anything that you're noticing from them, kind of?
Not much, to be honest. Their names aren't really out there. I mean, it's hard to really be a shining star when you have Connor Bedard and Mason McTavish just tearing it up and doing what they do best and score goals. And
Right.
So it's tough. I've watched bits and pieces of it, but I don't really notice either of them out there.
Well, part of the thing that I think is telling for me, and I just happened to look at like ice time before we got on here for the game that they're playing right now. And again, keep in mind when we're talking, and the last I looked, it was 8-1 Canada.
Right.
Tyson Forster's had 5 shifts. Denoyer's had 4. I think it's like 3 and 4 minutes apiece ice time.
Interesting.
Which, you know, you're looking at Forster, who I think started the tournament on the second line, and he's already getting lower ice time is a little telling for me. I mean, and it might not be the player. It's a coaching decision sometimes. But this is not what you wanted to see when you were looking at these two as probably the marquee Flyers prospects in this competition.
Right. I wonder how much of that plays into, you know, they're playing Slovakia and they want to kind of save a Forster for better competition later on in the tournament.
So what about Denoyer then, right?
Yeah, I don't know about that one, but that's just me thinking maybe they're just kind of holding them back and just time management, stuff like that.
And I think he got 14 minutes last night or something like that, which is, you know,
and that could play into it too, the back-to-backs and stuff like that. Like I said, time management and stuff. That type of stuff with these young players, you really have to play through it easily,
Sure.
so that they're not burned out towards the end of the tournament when they're trying to go win a medal.
Right. I mean, and speaking of ice time and shifts, if you talk about somebody on the polar opposite, Emil Andre yesterday, I think he had 24 minutes. It was like 35 shifts.
Just eating it up.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't put anything on the score sheet, I don't believe.
I don't think any of our prospects have put anything on the score sheet.
Right. I think Forster might have had an assist today.
Okay.
But yeah, if you look at yesterday's numbers, nobody had anything. But like, this is what you want to see from Andre, right? Like, you want to see him playing a lot. There are certain things when I was watching yesterday where, again, I have a hard time seeing it translate to the NHL simply because of size. One of the things that I noticed highlighted was his escapability, and I've got things to say about just highlighting one moment when pretty much every hockey player at that level is.
A 10-second clip doesn't do anything for me.
Right. But
from a TV.
when you're playing against bigger competition, I wonder, like how much that's going to actually play a factor.
Absolutely.
Zanetti, one of the only things that I took away from Zanetti was the TSN broadcast, which is on NHL Network. When they first started the Switzerland versus Sweden game, I really only got to watch like the first period, but they said somebody who's going to be playing a lot, Brian Zanetti.
Interesting.
So you're assuming like Andre time of ice, and it was like 14 minutes, which
it's a decent chunk, but
right. I don't know. With that guy, I think it's like it's really size at this point, and
right.
There was nothing impressive, but there was also nothing that stood out as kind of glaring.
Yep. Yeah, but, I haven't watched much of Zanetti.
Right.
It's just a team that's not of interest to watch in the World Juniors. You want to watch the Canadas, you want to watch the Swedens, and the USAs. So
sure. And that's actually a question I have for you. Does the fact that he plays for an inferior team like Switzerland, like, does that kind of is that deceptive when it comes to evaluating him?
It shouldn't when you're a scout or whatnot,
right?
Because you can still get some quality time of actually watching him and his play against a better competition or even of equal competition. So, I mean, it shouldn't drop him down. I hate to say because I haven't watched him much.
Right.
Because I want to watch the good games. I want to watch the Canada smackdown Slovakia 8-1 type of play because it's entertaining. Like
right.
Bedard's first goal last night was just
that stick, man,
unbelievable. Like that's why you watch the World Juniors, to watch the kids that are going to be
right
the next wave of the NHL.
Right, and you know what? Like, no offense to Brian Zanetti,
right.
We just don't need a Brian Zanetti.
Exactly.
And I think we'll kind of dive deeper into those conversations as we get in kind of to our main topic. So, Hoagie, you want to kind of serve up the first guy we're going to talk about?
Yeah, we're talking about our favorite USA captain, Cam York, defenseman, drafted in 2019, 14th overall. Last year kind of teetered between the Flyers and the Phantoms. Played 34 games with the Phantoms, 2 goals, 10 assists. With the Flyers, 30 games, 3 goals, 7 assists. Kind of par for the course for Cam York,
right?
Playing in between the teams.
Right, and I think this year, I mean, we can both say with confidence that he's not going in between. Like, this is an NHL season.
If he doesn't make the roster, it's gonna be flames.
Right.
I think this is the year where we're gonna see Cam York develop into a top-tier defenseman for the future.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I want to go as far as saying he's not only the most intriguing prospect in the system, he's the most intriguing player on the Flyers roster this year for me.
Yep.
Because if he plays to his potential and is able to show top 4 capabilities, the ripple effect of that could be huge.
Oh, absolutely.
Because then you're looking at someone like Provorov or someone like Sanheim being expendable because you can slide York into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think we're both in agreement that he's probably playing bottom 6 minutes, probably on the third pairing with Justin Braun, most likely. And I think being paired with a Justin Braun is going to have huge dividends for him this year because Braun is that veteran presence that we need to kind of help teach him him the ropes.
And it allows York to use that offensive prowess a little bit more, right? And be aggressive without it being as much of a risk.
Exactly, yeah. Because we know Braun. He's just on a, stay home and take care of his house.
Right. I mean, you look at a Torts system where it's really defense first. Like it will help York continue to develop in that game, but it also will provide him the opportunity, to go off the rush, like what we've talked about time and time again on the main show. But like he is somebody where it's like that outlet pass or that ability to carry the puck into the offensive zone. Like that's his strong suit. I would assume he'll get power play time
on the point. Yep. I was thinking the same thing as you were saying. I think they should put him on at least power play 2. I don't think he's ready for power play 1. I think that's going to be Tony DeAngelo's spot for the time being, unless Cam York surprises all of us and just plays out of his mind. He's a great quarterback on the power play.
Sure.
And I think it'll just be untapped potential for him.
And I think such an important thing with prospects when you're looking at like ones that you really want to groom into your top players is alleviate pressure as much as you can to the point where it's like you're here. This is kind of your security zone, but your continued play, you can make yourself more of a fixture in this roster, or a more important piece in this roster. Like right now, he's a third pairing guy. The pressure isn't for him to overproduce like it would have been in last year's decor, but it's like, this is where you are. Now you start to climb up the ring and earn more responsibilities.
Yep. Earn your rank.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know that there's much else to say about him.
We know what we have with Cam York, and we're excited for it.
Right.
It's been a long time coming for him to be slotted into this lineup. And when he came in, what was it, last year he signed or after the World Juniors, we were all excited because we knew sooner or later he was going to be in the NHL lineup.
And he's one of the few where it's like there's certainty there.
Yeah, exactly. There's certainty that he will be in the lineup.
Right.
Just untapped potential. I'm excited to see what he can give us for the future.
Right. And it's funny because that security means we didn't need to spend too much time talking about him.
Right.
But so shall we move on to the next guy?
Yeah. Let's go on to our boy Ronnie Attard. Again, 2019 draft, third rounder, 72nd overall. Played last year in the NCAA with Western Michigan. 39 games played, 13 goals, 23 assists. And then Frozen 4 ended. He signed with the Flyers and stayed in the NHL for a little bit for 15 games, 2 goals, 2 assists.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if you've ever listened to our main show or read my Twitter, I'm very critical of Ronnie Attard.
Yeah. Yep.
He is somebody who I think has great offensive talent, but lacks in almost every aspect of the game. You saw when he had his kind of cup of coffee on the Flyers at the end of the season, right? There were just some real glaring errors that he made. Now, granted, he didn't make the same error twice, which I mean, it might sound like I'm, poking fun, but that's a big thing, right? Because that means that he's learning something.
Right.
But I do think that like his defense is just, he plays such a rover style offensively that he's always out of position defensively. He can't get back quick enough. Right. I don't think his hockey IQ is really that high up there. So some people are very high on him, like top 4. I think if he could get everything else together, yeah, sure. With that offensive ability, you'd like to see a guy like that in the top 4. But I'm just not sold. I think he's going to need a lot more grooming time in the AHL than some people do.
Right. I mean, I think he'll definitely be competing for a roster spot with Cam York, but I think we know who's going to win that battle.
Right.
Cam York, hands down. He has more games played in the NHL. You say he hasn't made the same mistake twice, but I mean it's a small sample size of 15 games. Those mistakes might happen over and over and over again if he gets more playing time in the NHL.
Right.
I think, like you said, stick him in the AHL, bring him up if there's injuries to the core six, and just give him those feelers.
Right.
But if he's making a mistake, sit him down, show him what he's doing, and say, "Hey, you can't do that." You kind of reel it back in. Let's play your game, play our game, the defensive game, because I do think he's a good defenseman. He's a big defenseman. He's a big goofy defenseman, like you said. I don't think his offensive prowess is going to translate to NHL.
Yeah,
he's got to tone it back into the defensive guy that he should be.
I agree with you 100%. And when I would watch his Western Michigan games, right, a lot of his goals or assists were off the same exact kind of play. And it's like that works at certain levels, but
at NCAA.
Right, but in the NHL, like this is what they do. They scout their opponents. Mm-hmm. And if they go, okay, this is what this guy can do, we're gonna
shut him down.
We're gonna shut him down.
Look at Gossesbear. Everybody knew what he was going to do. That open up and then go right past the guy. They learned that real quick and just attack him.
Right, exactly. And I think that honestly, if they can make Adard a legitimate bottom pairing defenseman, he's got a better chance of cracking the NHL roster.
A defensive defenseman.
Defensive defenseman.
Yep. I agree. I 100% agree. Because I mean the numbers are there in the NCAA.
Right.
But it's not going to translate. I mean, 2 goals, 2 assists in the 15 games played. That's pretty good. But I mean, it's not Saturn to me. It's
even go back to his USHL days, and it was like he went from non-existent to all of a sudden he was like the USHL defenseman of the year, and that's why we drafted him.
Right.
I think he was an overager when we drafted him. I might be wrong on this, but like he found ways to be effective that were kind of unconventional. And the reality is those unconventions aren't really going to work.
Yeah.
At the pro level. And I mean, again, he had his chances last year, but we sucked last year. It was about providing the kids the opportunity.
Seeing what we had and showing everybody else what we have as well for trade bait, what have you.
Right. But now you take him and like you said, see what you can do, see if you can mold him into what you need.
Yep.
If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah, pretty much.
Speaking of guys that don't seem to be working.
We've talked about this guy a lot over the past year or so. Igor Samola, defenseman, again, undrafted free agent. Played mostly down in the AHL, 58 games with the Phantoms, 4 goals, 25 assists. Played 10 games with the Flyers due to injuries, what have you. Didn't register any points. I'm pretty sure he didn't really see much ice time when he was up here.
Right.
Like bottom 6 minutes and just here's the shift here and there every period. But this dude boggles my mind. Because we've said it over and over. We said it on the podcast last week. He's got to fill out his frame. He's got to do this. He's got to gain weight. He's got to gain muscle. We've been saying this for I don't even know how long with this guy.
Like 2-3 seasons at this point.
Right.
Right. I mean, what the biggest problem with me here is when we talked about York, I'm not necessarily we, but like Flyers, fans, media, whatever, you want to call people. Whenever we talked about York, we always kind of paired him with Zamula. Like, you put York or Zamula up there, right? Give York or Zamula a chance. You've got a first-round pick and an undrafted free agent. Yep. And I know that during the Ron Hextall era, we got really excited about our undrafted free agents. And Phil Myers worked out great, didn't he?
Yeah.
We were just as excited.
Phil Myers going to bite us in the butt because he's going to be on Tampa Bay.
He's never going to play with Tampa Bay. He's going to be on Syracuse.
I don't know. I just think Tampa Bay is just going to take that kid and just mold him into an all-star.
I mean, if anybody can,
it's
right?
going to be Tampa Bay. Exactly.
Right. But again, like you're looking at another big body, very tall defenseman, right? Phil Myers was what, 6'5", Zamula 6'3".
Right.
You know, another tall guy. They had good offensive numbers in the CHL, good offensive numbers in the AHL. But it's just at this point, right? What do you do with Zamula if he hasn't seriously competed for a spot at this point?
Right.
What makes you think that's going to change?
It's not at this point. I mean, look, I said it with Adder. I think he's going to kind of compete with York. Zamula, I'm not even wasting my breath saying he's going to compete for a spot this year. I just think he's kind of fallen into a lull of this is I am what I am, and if I'm in with the Phantoms, I'm still playing professional hockey somewhere. Better being here than in Russia right now. So
for real. I mean, and you said too, right? If you're constantly having this conversation of, well, he still needs to fill out his frame. If he hasn't at this point, it's just not going to happen. Right. And maybe that's no fault of his own, right? Like we've talked about.
Right.
People produce muscle and mass differently, and
bad genetics, man.
Right. I mean, and he's only 22 years old.
Right.
So I do think that, like, yes, there's still time for him to turn into an NHLer, but I don't think in the Flyer system there is, because we just have so many young defensemen.
Right. I had written that down. He's lost in our defensive despair of misery. Like we've talked about how we have like this great goaltending prospect pipeline. I think our defensive has just gotten so much flood in there,
right?
That he's gotten lost. He kind of took another pipeline and was like, oh, here's the Phantoms. I fit well into here.
Right.
So it's not fair to him, but it is what it is at this point with this kid.
Especially when you're talking about like bottom pairing, right? It's the same thing as like bottom six forwards, but the difference between bottom six forwards and bottom pairing defensemen are only two of them.
Yeah, you're not really going further than that.
And I mean, it's next man up. Like if you can't move up the ranks consistently, someone is going to pass you.
Right. And I mean, you can say next man up. He played 10 games last year with the Flyers. Cam York played 30.
Right.
I kind of saw who was doing better at that point.
Right. I mean, and it really shouldn't have been a debate.
No, it shouldn't have. And, I mean, it was when we didn't have any sample size of these kids in the NHL.
Sure.
That's why it was a debate.
Right.
This kid's a number one. This kid's undrafted. There's all types of potential here, but I think just watching Cam York in Michigan in the USA World Juniors, we just knew.
Right, it's very different.
Yeah, very different player.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing, right? Like when you follow your team's prospects, you don't look at the big picture. You don't look at every other team. You just look at what you have, and you go, "Wow, we found maybe a diamond in the rough." But like every team signs an undrafted free agent. It happens.
It does, but I feel like with the Flyers, it's more glaring.
Well, it's because you follow the team. But like to me, right? And we can have this conversation when we talk about another guy. But like when you look at someone like Zamula and go, okay, look at the numbers he's putting up in the WHL. Look, whoa, we got him. But why wasn't he drafted? You know what I mean? Like, why weren't these guys drafted? It's 7 rounds long. There's 200-something picks.
Right.
You talk about the probability of a 6th or 7th round pick becoming a legit NHLer. I don't even know what the percentage is for undrafted free agents.
It's low. It's got to be low.
I mean, and the fact that we were talking about him in the same breath as a first round, top 15 pick is pretty crazy.
Right. And I mean, it's all to blame because of Phil Myers, like you said.
Right.
Because he just kind of came in and did his job and did his job well and kind of gave us promise.
Sure.
We were just hoping that, we found another Phil Myers diamond in the rough type of player that nobody else saw on the market.
Right. I mean, because when you look at Phil Myers, do you look at him as like a legitimate NHL defenseman, or do you still look at him as kind of this tweener?
Phil Myers, I think he's a bottom 6.
Right.
I mean, middle 6. I think he's capped at middle 6.
Middle 6. He's a defenseman, buddy.
Oh, the second defensive pairing. Screw you. You know what I mean.
He's a bottom 4 defenseman.
Bottom 4. Thursday. I am tired, man. That USA game the other night, the 10 o'clock game, that really screwed up my week.
Yeah, I have no business staying up for that stuff.
I tried. Didn't make it.
Yeah.
but yeah, you know what I mean.
Right. So, I mean, if you were to say percentage chance that he is on the NHL roster at any point this season, barring like not crazy amount of injuries, what would you put that at?
25%.
Yeah, I think I might even go in a little lower.
Yeah.
Like, 15, 20%. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have Adder who will slide in before him. We have other players that will go up before he will.
Right. And again, you can say, he's a Hextall guy. Right. So what Hextall saw in him,
right,
Fletcher never saw.
He obviously doesn't see.
Right.
So.
All right. So we've gone from people who might flirt. Well, 1 definite on the NHL roster, 2 who might flirt with the NHL roster, to 2 who are not going to be anywhere near an NHL roster this year or maybe even ever. You want to give us the first name?
Yeah, we got Bryce Brzezinski. Chuck Fletcher special here.
Alliteration and Minnesota.
Yep. Right when you're drafted 2019 again, it's pretty much the draft in 2019 right here.
Right.
7th rounder, 196 overall. Last year played with University of Minnesota. 39 games played, 12 goals, 14 assists.
Was he Mr. Hockey or whatever they call that? Did he win that?
He won that Minnesota Mr. Hockey award. I don't even know what it is, to be honest. But
it's crazy. If you look at his high school numbers, he was averaging like 3.3 points per game.
73 games played. I wrote it down because they were just wild. 73 games played, 169 points in high school. Yeah. Like in Minnesota high school.
Right.
That's some of the best there is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, still high school though, right? You know, yeah. I mean, it is a little different.
It's where we all peaked, right?
Right. Yeah. Unless you ask Derek Bob, that would be more like middle school. It'd be 5th grade.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, the thing with Bryce Brzezinski is his offense hasn't really translated to Minnesota. Okay. I mean, he's still, I think last year was top 5 in points in Minnesota, but I don't know if that's really something you boast about. Like, He's kind of that second tier scorer.
He's an interesting player. I was trying to find some clips of Minnesota. He seems to me to be like a pass first type of player, where he doesn't want to rip that shot. He'd rather find the lane to an open player so that they can make the play.
Right.
I've said
his skating to me holds him back too. Like whenever I see him, how
many times have we said that too?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, especially when you're talking about a 7th round pick, you know, but like, I think that limits his offense too. You know, It's like if he's not in the perfect position to shoot it right there, like he's got to pass because he can't do anything with his skates.
Exactly. Yep. I do think he's great positionally in puck battles. I watched a couple of those, and him one-on-one, even in open ice, he just kind of gets around the player and protects the puck, kind of like a Kevin Hayes-esque way from 3 years ago. Which I love that style of play where nobody can get the puck off of you and you're just bumping off of them. So he's a big player like that, but I don't think his offensive prowess is going to translate into college. I mean, he's a senior this year, hasn't signed yet, and who knows what will happen.
Right. I mean, and you know, when you're a senior and you're again a 7th round pick, right? The writing tends to be on the wall a little bit. But I mean, if you look at his skill set, Hoagie, and you were to project him in the NHL, where does he fit on this roster? Where would you think? What kind of forward, Hoagie?
Bottom six, baby.
Yeah, I mean, it's right. Another fourth line, maybe third line. Again, if it were
Pushing it.
Yeah, I mean,
Pushing it.
there, it's not there. And I think the interesting thing here, and where I wanted to take the conversation with Brzezinski, is when it comes to whether or not he'll have a contract waiting for him. All depends to me on who the general manager is at the end of the season.
That would be very interesting.
Right?
He's a Fletcher guy, so I think if Fletcher's still around, there's going to be a piece of paper waiting for him.
Right. I mean, listen, there still might not be. Like, at some point, somebody's got to be like, yo, Chuck.
Like, what are you doing?
We can't keep filling the roster with these bottom six guys. You know, like, not even in the AHL. You're talking about top-end talent. Bryce Brzezinski's not it. But neither is Nick Delorier. You know, so, but I do think that, like, if it's a new general manager coming in where it's like ownership is, we need to change things right away, they're not even going to spend a second.
They're not even looking. They're not even looking at the pipeline. They're looking at the roster. They're looking at what we have now and what we can change now.
Right. I mean, and nothing jumps off the page. I mean, if you look at this guy's stats, you know, Minnesota typically has a pretty good college hockey team.
Yep.
He just kind of is there.
Right.
You know, so unfortunately for him, it just doesn't look promising.
Right. And there's probably a reason why he's playing his senior year.
Yeah, I mean, but like some players do. You know, I mean,
some players do, not all, but I mean, why'd you want to play college hockey? To win a national championship. That's probably why he wants to stay. Because at this point, he's a senior. He should be top dog at this point.
Right.
And he's trying to lead his team to a natty.
Right. Well, it's like another Flyers prospect who I actually think officially isn't a part of the pipeline anymore, but Gavin Hain. He plays for North Dakota. And I think he was like a 6th, 7th round pick. And he chose a 5th year of eligibility because it was like, well, you know, you're not going to make the roster. Right. Like you're not going to get a contract, you know.
Nothing wrong with that until you start signing them.
But I don't know. Anything else about Bryce Brzezinski?
No, not much to say about him.
On to a guy that probably we don't have much to say about. And the last one for today.
J.R. Avon, as known as John Randall Avon, correct? Something like that. Much like Zamula, undrafted free agent. He's a left-handed center. Playing in the OHL for the Peterborough Petes. I love that name. Such an awesome team name. Kind of a flashy offenseman. 64 games played, 29 goals, 39 assists.
I mean, the conversation with this guy that I think some people got excited was there were some draft rankings that had him kind of like in that top 100, right? Or maybe just outside of it. But because the OHL didn't play in his draft year, he fell off the board completely. So people were like, well, you're looking at somebody who most likely would have been drafted in a normal year had he had the opportunity to play, but he didn't. So we grabbed him, and now we once again have another undrafted free agent steal on our hands.
Right.
You know, but like, what is he? Over a point per game player last year.
Yep.
You know, I think he had like a 4-goal game or something ridiculous at one point.
I think he did as well. I think that's one of the highlight videos if you actually look him up.
Right. But the reality is like point production in the OHL doesn't always translate a la Morgan Frost.
Right. He's no Connor McDavid.
Right. So I don't know. Is this even anybody like what would it take for you to get excited about Avon this season?
I mean, if he just started lighting it up even more than he did last year.
Like 100-point season?
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, if
80?
he just 80s, it's pushing it. But yeah, if you just lit it up, I mean, he's got the skill.
Right.
He's a great skater. He's got explosive speed.
Right.
I don't know how much video you've watched him, but
Yeah.
just a small amount that I've watched, I was like, holy crap, this kid can skate.
Yeah, he can blow past people.
Yeah, and I watched an interview with him. He models his game after McKinnon.
I'm all right.
I mean, like seriously, if we can find a McKinnon that went undrafted, sign me up. As long as he's lighting it up and I can play in the NHL and do that in the NHL, I'm all for it.
Right. You know, I think one of the things too, and we kind of talked about this the last prospect show, was like, I'm tired of these guys who show offensive promise, but it's like then we constantly pigeonhole them to, well, they top out at a bottom six.
Right.
You know, like Denoye, right? Put up all sorts of points in the queue, but well, he topped out at bottom six. He looks like more of a bottom six player. Like, I need to see something from Avon that's like, no, actually.
Yeah.
You know, I can actually play
really
maybe middle six. And I think that explosive speed can translate into something.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
What can he do with that? And that's what I'm interested to see this year. Like, can he just straight up dummy opponents?
Right. I hope so.
Right. But it's going to be a long journey for a guy like this.
Yeah. Undrafted. I mean, the ceiling is his potential. He could go as far high as he wants, but he could also drop as low as he wants as well. Kind of like Zamula.
Right.
And you don't know.
And you run into another situation where who's the GM when it's time to make those big decisions?
Yep.
You know, and I know that some people don't want to look at that as a reality, but when it comes to players who are either undrafted or 7th round, 6th round picks, it does play a part.
Right. I mean, what's wild is you said he was in the top 100 in his draft class, and just because he didn't play that year, he just fell off the board is just wild to me.
Which is a little crazy, right? When you think about it, like,
yeah, like you obviously know he has the potential and he should be in that top 100, whatever.
And he wasn't the only OHL player that didn't play.
And like, others got drafted in that.
Right. Yeah. You know, so I don't know. I mean, there's most likely something else there, you know,
that we can't see. Yeah.
Right. You know, I mean, what was he doing during that off season? Yeah, who knows? Right. But,
playing men's league hockey with his buddies.
Right.
Enjoying the summer. Yeah.
But all right. So before we go, I did have one more topic that I didn't want to kind of preview with you, but we have a prospect that we were originally going to talk about this episode, and whether or not you want to consider this guy a prospect, because he seems like he's been in the organization forever. But Wade Allison has yet to sign a contract with the Philadelphia Flyers. What's going on with that?
I don't know. Part of me thinks he's still hurt, or something happened and nothing's been released, and someone's getting hesitant to sign this kid.
But we tendered him.
Did we? I don't even know.
We would have to tender him, or he would be an unrestricted free agent by this point.
I thought he was an RFA.
So he's an RFA, right? But if you don't tender your RFAs, like we didn't tender Matthew Strome or Maxim Sushko, so they become UFAs because we don't retain their rights.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like if the issue was he was still hurt and it didn't look like he was going to, you know, recover, then you'd think maybe we wouldn't tender him. Right.
But we're also not going to arbitration either.
Right. It's just kind of hanging.
It's like limbo. Like, is there something out there that it's a weird situation with this kid.
It is a weird situation because what leg does this kid have to stand on?
He hasn't have one.
Right. I mean, we said this on the main show, right?
Yeah.
And like he hasn't been healthy since his freshman year at Western Michigan.
Yep.
So it's weird to me that this is the guy that we have yet to find anything else on.
And it's just crickets. Like no one's really talking about it.
Right.
Except for people that like you and I and other people that watch the prospects closely.
Right.
No one is really talking like the bigger the beats and whatnot. They're not talking about him.
Right.
So
and he was somebody we were really excited about too.
He was supposed to be in the lineup last year.
Yep. until he decided to play a rookie game.
Yo, they posted that rookie game. It's against the Rangers again, and I guess it's going to be at the PPL on Instagram. I was like, just don't even play it. I commented, just don't play it.
Right. Yeah, no, those games are just they're bad news, especially for a team that just seems to be losing everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, Ivan Fedotov has his court date.
Yay.
So what, September 20th? We expect that to change, right?
Nope.
Yeah, poor kid.
There's no way.
All right, well, I think that's all we got for today, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, that was a good one. So next time we will pick another 5. Originally, I was telling Hoagie we're just going to go in alphabetical order because I'm lazy, but maybe we'll get a little bit more creative with it.
A little spicy.
Yeah, I mean, we did go York and Zamula, so maybe we'll do a little bit from the top, a little from the bottom. But you can find Hoagie at Pod Street Hoags. You can find me at Pod Street Gove. You can find the podcast at Pod ST Bullies. Also, if you're into Flyers podcasts, please give our affiliates a follow as well. We've got Flyers High and Wide and our friends at 5 Minute Major. And if you've got nothing else to say, Hoagie, I'm going to say bye now.
We've got a lot of content coming up.